So expectedly, Joe Biden has been an unmitigated gaffe machine, and just within the last 2 weeks alone, he's made approximately 8,342 gaffes. And it's just embarrassing. Case in point.
What happened when the kids from Parkland marched up to, and I met with them, and then they went off to up on the Hill when I was vice president. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. We choose truth over facts.
Sir, this is a Wendy's. Are you going to order or not?
I mean, look, the attack ads during the general election, they write themselves. And of course, Donald Trump is capitalizing on Joe Biden's numerous gaffes, and he is making the case that Joe Biden is not mentally fit to be president.
Joe Biden is not playing with a full deck. This is not somebody you could have as your president.
Now, on top of that, Donald Trump also tweeted, Joe Biden just said, "We believe in facts, not truth. Does anybody really believe he is mentally fit to be president? We are playing in a very big and complicated world. Joe Biden doesn't have a clue." Now, Donald Trump is quite literally the dumbest president in American history, but if he, of all people, is able to persuasively argue that maybe Joe Biden isn't mentally fit to be president, that's just a snapshot of what's to come. Because he will run an incredibly aggressive campaign against Joe Biden, and in the process of defending himself, Joe Biden will trip over his own words, make 15 to 20 more gaffes in the process of one singular defense, and it's going to be a disaster. But after he's made all of these gaffes, and Donald Trump is now attacking him for it, we are still beaten over the head with the argument that he's somehow more electable. I mean, his wife was on MSNBC talking about how Joe Biden really is the more electable candidate, and we should support him as opposed to other candidates who are better at certain policies, because if we want to beat Trump, then we've got to go with Joe.
You know, your candidate might be better on, I don't know, healthcare than Joe is. But you've got to look at who's going to win this election. And maybe you have to swallow a little bit and say, okay, I so personally like so-and-so better. But your bottom line has to be that we have to. Because I know that not all of you are committed to my husband. And I respect that. But I want you to think about your candidate, his or her electability, and who's going to win this race.
No. Joe Biden, we all knew this, was going to be his own worst enemy. And his gaffes are becoming a problem. And that's just one of the many issues. Like, if he made a bunch of gaffes, but was still a pretty solid politician, had good progressive policy proposals, maybe I could give him a pass, even if I would admit that that would make him a little bit less electable. But it's gotten so bad that allies of Joe Biden are literally now floating the idea of scaling back his campaign events in order to limit the number of gaffes that he makes. So what we are witnessing is the electability argument implode before our very eyes. And if they honestly believe that they can hide him away forever, I mean, you can't. If he becomes the nominee, which I hope he does not, he's not going to be able to hide. You can hide during a primary when your numbers are up, but during the general election, if you hide away, you're going to lose. You are going to lose. And if Joe Biden actually cared as much about the country as he claims he does, he would drop out. He would drop out because he knows that he's not mentally fit to run against Donald Trump, who is someone who's also not mentally fit. But if that mentally unfit person can portray you as being less mentally fit than him, you've got a problem. You are going to give us 4 more years because of your ego. And what's interesting is that there's a report from the New York Times that demonstrates how Biden's ego is bigger than we thought, because his BFF, Obama, actually tried to convince him before he entered the race to maybe not run. So as Glenn Thrush of the New York Times reports, the two men spoke at least a half dozen times before Mr. Biden decided to run, and Mr. Obama took pains to cast his doubts about the campaign in personal terms. Quote, "You don't have to do this, Joe. You really don't," Mr. Obama told Biden earlier this year, according to a person familiar with the exchange. But as we all know, Joe Biden did not take Obama's advice. And we all know why Obama was saying that to Joe Biden. He knows what we all know. Obama is a smart guy. He's a gaffe machine. He's not going to be able to not piss off the base. I mean, like Hillary Clinton, the longer he stays in the spotlight, the more that his favorability goes down, which is a really bad thing for a politician, which is a really bad thing during a presidential election that lasts, forever. So Obama, there are reports that he has taken a sudden interest in Joe Biden's campaign, but while the media may portray that as, he's rooting for Joe Biden, what that is in actuality is Obama basically trying to help Joe Biden's campaign, saying, look, you guys are kind of fucking up. He has communicated his frustration that Mr. Biden's closest advisors are too old and out of touch with the current political climate, urging him to include more younger aides, according to 3 Democrats with direct knowledge of the discussion. In March, Mr. Obama took the usual step of summoning Mr. Biden's top campaign advisors, including the former White House Communications Director Anita Dunn and Mr. Biden's longtime spokeswoman Kate Bedingfield, to his Washington office for a briefing on the campaign's digital and communication strategy with members of his own staff, including his senior advisor Eric Schultz. When they were done, Mr. Obama offered a pointed reminder, according to 2 people with knowledge of his comments. Win or lose, they needed to make sure Biden did not, quote, embarrass himself or damage his legacy during the campaign. So Obama is literally telling Joe Biden's people, make sure that he doesn't embarrass himself or damage his legacy, because he's prone to say some dumb shit. And, during this campaign, he's not only going to fuck up his legacy, but my legacy as well. That's essentially what Obama is saying to Joe Biden's closest people. So the writing is on the wall. Everyone sees it. Joe Biden is a liability. Despite what everyone is telling us about electability, despite his current poll numbers, a lot can change between now and November of 2020. And if you don't think Trump will actually be able to convince people that Joe Biden is more mentally unfit than him, you'd be mistaken, because even if it's clear that Donald Trump is a dumb guy, there's a difference between the American people just believing that you're dumb and believing that your mental capacity is actually diminishing. Now, Trump's mental capacity is absolutely diminishing as well, but it's just a matter of who the American people will believe more. And Trump was able to outflank Hillary Clinton from the left on certain issues like the TPP and, certain foreign policy issues. So if you don't think he's going to do the same to Biden and also contend that he's not mentally fit to serve, you're in for a rude awakening. So if Joe Biden, again, cared about the country, he'd drop out, because he's not going to be the best bet against Donald Trump. Am I saying that it's, a sure bet that he would lose against Trump? No. But am I worried if he's the nominee? Absolutely. I think it's very possible. In fact, I'd say that Trump would be the favorite in the event Biden were the nominee. So the situation is getting scary, even though Joe Biden's numbers are falling. They're not falling fast enough. And this poses a threat to all of us. Because let me remind you what happens if Donald Trump gets a second term. We lose the Supreme Court for decades, and we don't get just this, this conservative majority where most of the rulings will be conservative, and every once in a while, Roberts will side with the liberals on the court. We will get a solid conservative majority where 100% of the time the rulings will be conservative. Anything that Trump passes will be approved and upheld by this conservative majority. It would be a nightmare situation. So people need to put their egos aside and rally behind the candidates who actually can win, who have the grassroots support, and who aren't complete idiots and gaffe machines. We all know who that is. It's Bernie. Bernie is the one who could beat Trump. Nobody is a sure bet, but if I had to put my money on anyone, it's Bernie Sanders. It's always difficult to beat an incumbent president, so you want to make sure that you choose the strongest candidate. Of course, electability matters, but that person is not Joe Biden. It is Bernie Sanders, who is anti-establishment, who undercuts whatever anti-establishment pseudo-populist appeal that Donald Trump has. Joe Biden needs to drop out, do himself and the country a favor by just ending the campaign right now.
Mike is a total loser, so don't hit the subscribe button, okay? And whatever you do, folks, do not hit the notification bell either. Mike treats me so unfairly.